it her?
It is her. The state is not far. Get ready!
Falcon!
Hello and welcome to my God of War Ragnarok video review. It's been a long time coming. It's taken me a while to get through this game. To be fair, when it was all said and done, it took me about 35 hours, and I did not do all the side quests. There are so many side quests in this game. I have not done them all. I've not platinumed the game or anything like that. I did a majority of the side quests, and then it got to a point where I just wanted to beeline to the end. The nice thing about this game is once you finish it, you can go back and do any of those side quests after the game's done. My review of this game is probably going to be a little controversial to some people because I don't think it's a perfect game. In fact, I think there's a very serious problem with the game in terms of its story, and we're going to talk about that today. But I'm letting you know up front, there will be spoilers in this review. The game has been out for over a month. I think it's appropriate now that I can talk spoilers about this game. I'm just going to let you know right now, if you want to know the verdict on this game for me, just skip to the end of this video. I will give you a letter grade and tell you what my verdict is on God of War, but this is a spoiler review. So if you don't want to know anything about God of War Ragnarok, then skip to the end, get my score, and then maybe come back and watch this video after you've played through the game. So going into God of War Ragnarok, I was extremely excited because God of War 2018, the I guess reboot slash sequel for the series, was my game of the year 2018 on this channel. It was a game that when it came out, I did not have it reserved. Famously, I was not looking forward to it. I thought the idea of trying to humanize Kratos with a kid wasn't going to work. I was incredibly wrong on that, and the game turned out fantastic. Like that is an incredible game. One of my favorites of the PS4 generation. And now, about what, 5 years, almost 4.5 to 5 years later, we're getting this sequel to that, which is God of War Ragnarok. Your son Atreus is a little bit older, and we are dealing with the events from the end of God of War 2018. The game picks up, it seems like it picks up a couple years later, but you get thrown right into it. You know, between you are in a battle between you, your kid, and you're battling Freya, and kind of everything that you had to deal with in the first game. The beginning, and this is the important part for me to explain, the beginning of this game is fantastic. Like the first 5 hours or so are just, they're really good. It's really interesting. The story, when I first started talking about the game on podcast 572, I was like, man, the story really is kind of taking a reserved approach after the intro. That's really refreshing. The problem with this game is it almost pumps the brakes on everything for way too long. And so you end up with a game that has a fantastic beginning and a fucking fantastic ending, and the middle section of it, which is a majority of the game, is a slog. And when I say that, it's so much of a slog that I didn't play the game for almost a week during this like month period I was playing the game, because I just wasn't interested in going back to it. And I will tell you exactly the part that kind of broke me on playing it for a little bit. The first time that you take over and play as Atreus, he kind of goes off on his own. He meets some other characters. One character in particular, you spend almost 3 hours, at least that's what it felt like in game time for me, doing fetch quests. And I wasn't interested in that. Like, that whole part of the story did not interest me at all. It didn't move the story forward for me at all. And so that was just a real bummer for me. It left me scratching my head going, what are people talking about? Like, why is this game getting 10s out of 10s? I'm not understanding that, when I think the middle part of the game is kind of a narrative mess. You do go back after that. You have an extended period of the game where you play as Kratos with Freya, which is really, really interesting. Obviously, and this is, you know, one of the spoilers, like, Freya has a real turn of heart in this game, from hating you for what you did in the first game to her son, to accepting you and fighting by your side at the end of this game during the actual Ragnarok. I'll say, for a game that's called God of War Ragnarok, The actual Ragnarok event is fucking awesome. It's at the end of the game. You spend more time in this game talking about what if we avoid Ragnarok, or what is Ragnarok? What is Ragnarok going to do? Like, there's so many of this what if questions that it got to the point where I'm like, just get on with it, man. Like, just get to the point where I should care. But if you put the story part aside, everything else for me is top tier. The visuals. This is the first game now this generation that I can say this looks like a PS5 game. If someone were to walk up to me and ask me, hey, what's a game that will show off my PlayStation 5? I just bought one. God of War Ragnarok is your game. I don't even know how this game works on a PS4. I have not played it there. I have not watched any footage of it there. But just know, like, if you think this is a game that was made for PS4, it is straight up a PS5 game that they ported backwards, because it looks tremendous. I'm a little bit spoiled because I have a LG C1, so I have an OLED, so it just pops and looks better there, but still, it's a 10 out of 10 for that. It's a 10 out of 10 for sound design, for the music, for the accessibility options. Like, every other part of this game is a 10 out of 10, and I understand. And when I see all the other critical reviews and it winning all these Game of the Year awards, I get it for everything. But the narrative story to me is like maybe a 6 to a 7 out of 10. Because there's a whole part of the game I just did not enjoy. Like, it takes a lot for me to start playing a game and get to a point where I'm not interested in the story to put it down for a week. But I'll be honest, again, like the entire week of Thanksgiving, I didn't touch this game. Granted, I had family visiting and stuff at the time, but I still played games. But at the time, I'd rather go load up Vampire Survivors on my Xbox or Arcade Paradise or something like that than go back to God of War, because I just didn't care for where it was going. It wasn't moving anything forward. And we've seen this problem with Sony first-party titles since The Last of Us Part 2. Now, The Last of Us Part 2, famously my most controversial review on here, I hated that game's story. But I believe that's where this problem started. That is a game that has a terrible story, in my opinion. Then Horizon Forbidden West also is a game that its story kind of goes off the rails at the end, which came out earlier this year. So now we have God of War, which also has a narrative problem. And I'm wondering, like, what's going on with Sony first-party games and narrative? Like, are they losing, like, how to structure these games story-wise? I don't get it. So it is not to deter anyone from playing God of War Ragnarok. Like, I still think it's a tremendous game. It's still a game that's going to be on my top 10 list at the end of the year. It's just not going to be as high as I originally thought it was going to be for those reasons. Because at the end of the day, it can be the prettiest looking game. It can be the best sound, you know, you've ever heard in a fucking video game. It can control beautifully. But for me, if the story's not there all the way, there's a problem with the game. So one other issue I have with this game, this has also been a Sony first-party problem. It is more egregious in God of War than any of the other ones I've played. It is the idea of not letting the player, like, figure out things for themselves or discover things. There are so many times where I was climbing a mountain or climbing over a rock or something, and either your son or Mimir, the dude that's like a headless, you know, the headless dude that sits on your hip, would tell you what to do. Like, literally you're climbing, he's like, hey, if you go over that rock over there, I think that's where we need to go. And like, they do this all the fucking time in this game. And this was a problem in Horizon. There was a little bit of this in Last of Us Part 2. It is so egregious in this game that I cannot ignore it anymore. Like, this is a problem. It needs to be an option you can turn on or off. I don't need guidance. Like, you already have a mini-map. You already have a heads-up display that shows you where to go for whatever mission you're doing. I don't also need somebody telling me where to go constantly, or the constant reminders of, hey, you know, we're really in the thick of it with this main mission, but you know, we could stop right now and go do this side mission instead if you want to put that on hold. It just, it takes you out of the experience. And I think it's, again, more egregious in God of War than any other Sony first-party title, but it's been a problem for a while. On Horizon, you had Aloy talking all the time. From the footage we've seen of the forthcoming game Forspoken, it seems like that protagonist is doing the same thing as well. So this is a problem, and it needs to just become an option you can turn on and off, because while I understand maybe that's beneficial for some players, a majority of players do not need this. On Horizon, you had Aloy talking all the time. From the footage we've seen of the forthcoming game Forspoken, it seems like that protagonist is doing the same thing as well. So this is a problem, and it needs to just become an option you can turn on and off, because while I understand maybe that's beneficial for some players, a majority of players do not need this. So those are my two really big complaints with God of War. Like I said, otherwise I like where the story ends. I think the way the game ends, with major spoiler here, your son going off to kind of have his own quest, and, you know, Kratos walking to the other side of that, you know, hieroglyph thing or whatever it's called. I probably really butchered what it is, but, you know, opening the doors, looking at the pictures and going, oh, there's more to my story, you know, and that's teasing a potential third game, which they're gonna fucking make a third one of these. Like, this has been a tremendously successful franchise, and I want them to continue the story. It's going to be an interesting game. Like, now, also, I mean, let's be honest. Even though this game is about Kratos letting his son leave at the end to go do his own quest, you can totally write a third game where his kid gets screwed up somewhere and Kratos has to go save him. And that might be what the third game is. I mean, it's so easy to write that story, but I'm very interested in where it's going to go for a third game. I really hope it doesn't take another 4.5 to 5 years. And, yeah, so that kind of ends the major spoiler. I did like all the boss battles in this game too, especially the battles with Thor. At the very end, you fight Odin, also a fantastic boss fight. And I think all the exploration, again, the combat, it's all top tier. This is some of the best of the best of the best. And it's only dragged down by a narrative that has a lousy middle section. So, I'm giving this game a B-. I know people are going to be like, oh, it's not, you know, you're not giving it a 10 out of 10. What the fuck? You know, I know it's going to happen. Again, this is my opinion. Is it still one of the best games of the year? Absolutely. Are there going to be people out there that disagree with my opinion on the middle section of this game being kind of a drag? Absolutely. Again, it's just my opinion. But for me, you know, I hate to say it, because I really thought for sure starting this game, I'm like, this is going to be the easiest A I've ever given for a video game. A B- is pretty much where I'm at with this game, because, again, well, everything else is a 10 out of 10. That story is like a 6 to a 7 for me. So that has to drag the score down a little bit. So B- for me. If you haven't played God of War Ragnarok yet, I really encourage you to. I think it's a fucking fantastic game. And if you played the first one, you're going to have a good time. But if you're a PS4 owner out there, or even a PS4 Pro owner, and you are looking forward to playing this game, please just wait until you get a PS5. I cannot imagine the PS4 version is that great. And this game is truly a spectacle for next gen. So, as always, leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know below what you think about my review of this game, what you thought about God of War Ragnarok, and so on. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.